welcome everybody. You're all very, very welcome to be here at this webinar today, which we're very excited about delivering. My name is Katie Kelly. I'm a Senior Director here at ICMA and one of the co-founders of the ICMA Women's Network. Now, for those of you who don't know, the ICMA Women's Network is an open, collaborative, and importantly, a gender-inclusive women's network which promotes equality in the capital markets by supporting, connecting, and inspiring professionals of all genders and at all career stages. So through a combination of live events, online content, and practical workshops, we focus on career development. We facilitate dialogue on key issues, and we encourage cross-generational networking to build a more inclusive industry. We're open to all employees of ICMA member firms, and we really value diverse participation across genders and backgrounds, recognizing that broad engagement is really essential to drive sustainable, positive change. The ICMA Women's Network is managed by an international steering committee which operates across 14 different regions worldwide. Now, we just sent out our most recent newsletter today, a couple of about an hour ago. And that gives a snapshot of some of our recent and our upcoming activities. If you didn't receive it, or if you would like to add colleagues to our mailing list, please email us at iwn@icmagroup.org. That's iwn@icmagroup.org. Just before we go to the session, one thing I want to mention is a networking coffee morning that we'll be hosting in London for London-based members on the 22nd of May. If you would like to be included in our mailing for that, which will take place at about 8:30, please again email iwn@icmagroup.org. Now, I would love to introduce you to Tim Skeet. Now, Tim is the chair of the UK region of ICMA. He's a senior warden of the Worshipful Company of International Bankers, and he's a member of the Executive Management Committee of Bank of China UK branch. Now, as you might expect from someone with such an eminent title, Tim has years of experience and has certainly learned a thing or two about communication skills, handling sensitive situations, and networking over his time. So please listen attentively and get ready to pick up some really useful tips from the master. Tim, over to you.
Morning everyone. Morning, Katie. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm delighted to say that I've been involved with the Women's Network as a participant and supporter, well, since it was created, which is just over 10 years ago. And it's a really important initiative of the association. The association itself, as we all know, is an immensely valuable organization supporting the work that we all do in the markets. And it's fantastic that we've got this opportunity to engage this morning. I'm talking from a very sunny, beautiful London that you can't actually see over my shoulder because I got the blinds down and I blurred it, just otherwise you won't see me. Now, you don't really want to see me. I've got some slides which I will share with you. And the purpose of the slides is really to summarize the key points I'm trying to make. And there are 4 areas that we'll be discussing. And during the course of the 1 hour that we'll be together, I'm going to split it into quarter-hour chunks as best I can. I will start off by saying we work in a people business. That's an obvious thing to say, but it's also critical because communications between people is a key element of what we do. And it's not something that we are always good at doing. There are different contexts and different ways of doing it. And I'm trying to encompass really rather a lot in a very short period of time. And I have discussed with ICMA about doing an extended training on public speaking and more public engagement. But for the purpose of this, I'm going to try and give everyone a little bit of a series of tips as to what best to do when it comes to communicating. And I'm very aware that I'm doing this as a native English speaker. We work in a very multicultural, multilingual environment. Many of the people on this call, many of the people that Katie and I work with, do not have the benefit of having been born with the English language. That is a limiting factor and an opportunity. And I'm very aware, working as I do today in a Chinese institution, that language can be an unnecessary barrier. So the first thing I always try to do, whether I'm talking online in a webinar or I'm talking to people physically in a room, is ensure that people can understand and hear what I'm saying. And that's the first lesson that I try to share, because I'm always amazed at the assumption that so many people make that you just start talking and whoever you're talking to is understanding what you're saying. And I have observed so many situations over my career where that's simply not the case, where people might come to me afterwards and say, what did he or she just say to me? What was that about? I didn't catch something. A critical piece of communication got lost. And the point to make here is the error is both in the speaker and sometimes in the person to whom it is being spoken. And it's always valuable to ensure that if you can't understand or you can't hear, that you make that clear. But as a speaker, you should be responsible for making sure you're heard and understood. How many times across our industry does this not happen? So I'm going to try and take it a little bit back to basics. The 4 areas we'll cover will be communicating effectively. And I'll be talking about what are the basic rules of speaking in whatever context. And of course, there's a world of difference between talking at the ICMA AGM, which I've done in the past, hundreds of people, if not thousands of people in some cases, to talking to an intimate small group in a meeting. But the rules of engagement remain the same. Now, the second part is dealing with meetings. We in our industry love and hate our meetings. We are constantly in and out of meetings. But there must be some rules of engagement there. And I'm going to share a few thoughts with you for future reference, both as a chair, where you get to a position to chair meetings, or whether you're just being called in as a participant. The third one is one of the most critical elements, I think, in terms of developing careers. And whatever point in your career you may be, are you at the top, or you're halfway up, or you're just starting? Wherever you are, networking is a critical component of your career, of moving forwards and around internal communications and networking, external communications and networking. People need to understand how to do that, and it's difficult. And finally, delivering difficult messages. Now, we've tried to encompass a lot here. As a manager, as I have been for quite some time now, it is unfortunately my job to say things to people which they don't want to hear. It may be the year-end review. It might be a disciplinary hearing. It could be something to do with the quality of their work. Whatever the context, whatever the event, there are a few ground rules as to how best to approach it. Now, some of you will have other experiences. I'm always interested in hearing about those and sharing. But at the end of the day, we really want to try and use this forum as a starting point for a broader discussion and a broader checklist of things that everyone should be thinking about. So those are the 4 different areas. Let's start with communicating effectively. So Katie, you can show me the next slide. So here we are talking about delivery. Now, I have to emphasize a few points. These are 6 points which I think are the critical elements in any kind of speaking, be it in a small group or a very large meeting. Connect with the listeners, speed of your speaking, volume, what you're doing with your voice, what you're doing with your body language, the style that you're presenting or speaking, and the energy that you bring. Now, I will elaborate a little bit on those 6 points. Please bring your questions if you don't understand what I'm saying. But the first thing I usually emphasize on a much longer exposition of public speaking or presenting is know your context. It is really important that you understand where you're going to be speaking, who you're speaking to, when that's going to be, and what it is you're supposed to be talking about, be it a small meeting or a much wider, broader address at a formal event. So it's all about context and then deciding how you're going to adjust what you do, because in every case in our industry, we need to prepare. The less confident you are, and I'm very aware that most people are not very confident or comfortable other than in a small group of people they know. But these rules are there to help. So think ahead and prepare and keep these 6 different points very much in front of you. And I'm sure we can share these slides with you later so that you can have a look, and they're an aide-memoire. Connect with listeners. So first of all, understand in advance who you're talking to. Now, some meetings, some communication is ad hoc. But let us assume for 1 minute we're talking with a group. It may be you're called into a meeting or you have to speak at an event. Understand who and what and where and why. It's critical. Are you speaking in the morning, if it's a bigger public event where people might be awake, they've just had their coffee? Or have you got the graveyard shift, which is the period of time when they're digesting their lunch and they're all about to fall asleep? Because the dynamics of how you then talk to that group will be different. You have to make a different effort to engage with people. I've spoken all times of the day, all kinds of time zones, all kinds of events. And there is a marked difference in the way in which your audience responds to you first thing in the morning to say at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the effort and the style will have to change. So you have to learn to read what's going on. It's like going to talk to your boss. If your boss is in a good mood and is happy, communication becomes easy. If you go in there and you sense that there's something really terrible has happened, he's got a cold coming on, he's had a bad morning and lost some money on the stock exchange, whatever it might be, you may not want to be talking to him or her that day about whatever it is that might be a bit sensitive. It's choosing that context and knowing when is best to communicate. That is an important element people forget when it comes to communication. Pick your moment, know your timing, understand the context. So that's the connecting, that's the reading. The next 2 points are really important and everyone forgets them: speed and volume. I sit through, I don't know how many meetings, how many conferences, people get it wrong. People speak way too fast, particularly if English is their language, but sometimes not. And people, as I said earlier, for whom English is not the first language, struggle to follow. Passive listening and absorbing a message takes more time than delivering a message. There is a time delay. When you're speaking, don't assume in a meeting or a wider conference that people are understanding at the speed that you're talking. They do not. They will be a sentence or two behind you. It's very easy to break the connection and lose people. They're not following what you're saying. They're trying to keep up. The best thing you can do always is slow down. And not here, this is a webinar, we're online. It doesn't work. But in a public space, sometimes, believe you me, the power of silence is immense. To stop, reconnect, collect your thoughts, collect your audience. It's something always worth learning to do. Stop, wait, create a sense of anticipation, continue. So slow down is one thing, and volume. My hearing isn't what it used to be. Unfortunately, age is getting to me a little bit, and previous activities. I sit in meetings, I can't hear some people. I will usually say, sorry, can't hear. I mean, I'm not deaf, but all of us have that issue. And again, if it's across the cultural or language barrier, clarity and volume is critical. Some people, and I'm not going to make any generalizations, but some people, many people, seem to speak in a whisper, and the more important the people they're talking to, the more they drop their voice as if in deference. Whatever you do, don't do that. People can't hear you. Don't assume you're being heard. There are people who make fantastic contributions to meetings, but half the meeting can't hear what they're saying, or they hear only half of what they said. Both outcomes are really bad for the person speaking. If you want to make a point and have an impact, make sure you're being heard. Voice and body. Now, what you do with the voice is critical, more so on this kind of event where we're on a screen. You have to listen to my voice for the best part of the next hour. I have to make it sound a little bit interesting. People have a natural tendency, however, to speak in a monotone. And it's as boring as can be. It will send people to sleep. Your mission, in whatever context you may be speaking, is not to send people to sleep. Generally speaking, you want them to listen. So encourage them. Use your own tools to encourage people to want to listen. So use your voice, use your body language. Body language is an immensely important part of human communication. We sometimes underestimate it. Now, on a webinar, it's difficult again. I can wave my arms a little bit, but not too much. It's distracting. When you're in a public place or in a meeting, how you sit, how you use your hands and arms, your posture is critical. How many times do we go to the event, the conference, the big presentation, and the speaker is slumped up behind a lectern, grabbing the lectern as if the lectern is a defensive posture, a screen from the audience, who may have in pockets or in some abstract position, distracting from the interesting things that are being said. My recommendation, be it in meetings, be it in addresses, sit upright, stand upright, full face, eye contact, speak to the people you want to speak to. And if in a meeting, remember, don't just speak to the person who may have asked the question or who may be chairing. Speak to everyone around the table and remember to get heard. Let the person in the furthest corner still hear what you have to say. So those are basic rules. And I share those obvious rules because I sit in all these meetings, go to all these events, and people are constantly getting those two simple things completely wrong. So please, anyone listening, I don't ever want to be at something that you're speaking at where I can't hear you and I can't work out what you're saying and it's not clear and it's too fast. So let's get that clear. The body language is important. The style, well, look, please remember, your messaging is critical. Do the right thing in the right place. And finally, energy. Energy is something which is almost intangible, right? But You, when you're speaking, have to energize the room. You have to share your energy with everybody else. That's your job, be it in a meeting, be it somewhere else in a wider context. Bring your own energy. Have 3 cups of double coffee before you start. Whatever it is that gets you fired up, have it. Go in, be ready, because that will help you bring your listeners with you. Right, so that's part one. That's the first. Anyone wants to ask me a question about that side of communication? Let's do it now before I move on to the next part of this. We can bring on the next slide if you want. We're going to talk about chairing meetings. Now, okay, I don't have any questions yet, so we'll plug on. If you've got questions, then bring them to me at the end if that's easier for all of you. Now, let's just talk about chairing meetings. And again, I'm hugely critical of the way meetings are chaired in our industry. Whether you work in a law firm, a bank, a startup, generally speaking, meetings are done badly. I've had to chair meetings for ICMA for many, many years. I don't claim to be perfect. No one is perfect. But there are some basic rules of engagement, and I do want to share these thoughts with you. Chairing meetings is not simple. It's uncomfortable because you are at the center of attention and you're in control of whoever's in the room. At least you should be. So be in control. And it's not a question of your rank or seniority. Obviously, if there are more senior people participating, be aware of that, work with it, but please be in control. If you are there to chair the meeting, you must actively chair it. A lot of people go into meetings as if they just happen to be the focal point, but it's a free-for-all and everybody around them should do their own thing. So let me talk through what we need to do as a chair. Introduce participants. I go to meetings where people forget to do that. Sometimes I forget to do it adequately, but make sure everybody in a room knows who they are. Therefore, they know why they're there. Who they are and why they're there is the critical starting point for any reason. And as a chair, you should be aware of that before you even start. Again, just a word on that particular point. We all go to meetings you don't need to attend. We all go to meetings where there are lots of other people who they don't need to attend. So discipline around who actually bothers to go to whatever the discussion is about, discipline is critical. And in an ideal world, the chairman will have the ability to pre-decide who will be there and why. But you need to make those rules of engagement transparent and clear. What you don't want to end up with is people not being invited because they're irrelevant, but then them feeling put out because it's an important meeting to which they have not been invited, then they get all upset. So there is obviously some diplomacy and tact required always. But I'm looking at an ideal world where we're looking at meetings and their efficiency. What is the objective of meeting? Well, it's to ensure that whatever the meeting is about achieves its purpose in the minimum time possible. Now, that's my definition, and that's the definition which I, based on decades of going to meetings, would like to apply. Achieve the purpose of your meeting and then require clarity about what that purpose is. That's the point 4 on the slide. Be clear, but achieve that in the shortest time possible. That is the objective. We've all been to meetings that massively overrun. So know who is there, open the state and by stating the purpose. So everyone knows what they're trying to achieve. Watch the clock. I've got 3 people watching the clock, including me and Katie. We're all watching the clock here and we're just checking. We're coming up to halfway through our time allotted. We have to be aware of that. Follow the agenda, keep things moving. Things in meetings often don't have an agenda and they get stuck because everyone wants to talk about something. There's not enough discipline. Conversations go in circles. We've all been there. We've all done it. We've all had it. As chair, you should be in a position to stop that, keep things moving. That means being firm, but being fair. The tough thing about being a chairman is not about being popular. It's about getting to the end of the meeting to achieve its purpose in the time. Sometimes you have to stop people and move it on. It's uncomfortable. It has to happen. A good chair, a responsible chair will do that and will know how to gauge that. Mistakes will get made, but it's important. Don't let people dominate, repeat, stray, or drone. All of those things happen virtually daily in meetings we all go to. Domination by somebody who may or may not be the chairman, but may or may not be the most senior person. Whoever is chairing should prevent that from happening. Repetition, endless repetition of the same point, straying off into different topics away from the purpose of the meeting. The chair is there, or should be there, to stop that happening. And droning on irrelevantly. The chair should stop that the minute it starts. But we've all been where meetings drone on, continue with people being very boring because no one exerts that discipline. So ensure people get to participate. Now, this is an important point. There are sometimes junior people, new people to a group who don't feel comfortable. The chair's job is to get everyone involved in a conversation, unless these people are completely, they're just there to observe in the early stages. But give people the opportunity to contribute. I usually make the point at meetings, at client meetings or whatever, of asking the junior people in the room to contribute something, to give them a purpose, to give them some confidence, to build that confidence. And wherever you are in your career, bear that in mind. Think of the people below and behind and around you who may wish to also contribute and find a way of bringing them in. And a good chair will always try and do that. Finally, summarize the points, close the meeting. During a wide-ranging conversation, and the longer the meeting, people tend to forget where you've been, what's been discussed. It's always helpful for the chair to summarize where the meeting got to, and with a bit of luck, summarize how it achieved its purpose. Close the meeting on time, or even ahead of time. And that's a discipline. You need to formally close it, and don't let people think that somehow they can keep sitting there sipping coffee and keep chatting if it's brought to a close. So there's a quick run through of what it takes to chair. I'm sure there may be some questions around that. I see there's one. What if you're nervous and shy? How do you stand up and speak confidently? And look, let me just quickly address that point. It's a very good point. Most people are nervous and shy. Even people in private who are not. When you go into an unfamiliar, potentially hostile environment, maybe with senior people or people you don't know, yes, we all are slightly nervous and shy. There is nothing wrong. We are all a bit nervous and shy. Maybe I'm a little less nervous and a little less shy these days than maybe I was as a younger banker a couple of years ago. But, it's normal, human nature. Now, this is where the actor comes out. You have to bury that a little bit. You have to listen and judge. Feel the mood. But you must make the effort. Don't shut up and keep quiet and stay in the corner. You're not going to go anywhere with your career if you can't bring yourself to contribute, to show that you have something valuable to say. So I think there's a lot about getting yourself in the mood. Get yourself prepared. The more prepared you are, the more confident you will be. And one tip I will share with you and we'll get on to the next bit. If you just move on to the being in a meeting, the next slide, which is where the attending the meeting. One of the things I always say about attending meeting, and these It's the third, fourth, fifth point. Prepare a brief note of your key points. Now, what often happens when you're nervous and shy, and I'm talking a meeting and we can address what happens when you're in front of an audience in a minute, is suddenly someone says, and you, Tim, what do you think? And your mind goes a bit blank. Or you made a mental note on the way, and there were 3 things I really want to say at this meeting. And you get to point 1, then you get to point 2, then someone asks a question. And then the questions start going around the room, and you never get to point 3, which was in fact your most important point. And in the nervousness and you've lost it, you've done your bit, and you think, oh, God, good, I'm out of the limelight now, the conversation's gone somewhere else. But in reality, you never got your third point. What you need to do is prepare yourself, depending on the importance of the meeting and the context. Write down your 3 points. I'm forever scribbling myself notes, always a pencil in my hand, piece of paper, and I will write down a note. 1, 2, 3. Those are 3 things I want to make sure I say in this meeting, and I can intervene later to bring back in my third point if I've forgotten. Now, these are small tips, and as you practice and you grow in confidence, then it becomes easier. And obviously, as people, as they become more senior, they get more used to being a little less shy, a little less timid. But some people never throw that off. And again, if you're chairman, I mean, you need to be aware where people are a little shy and make sure that they are feeling comfortable and bring them into the conversation. And as a chair, you should be aware of that. Work with people. Unfortunately, in our industry, a lot of people lack EQ and they're not very good at figuring that out. In a public environment, well, if you are going to speak to a few hundred people in a big hall on a subject you know, the only thing I can recommend is practice, prepare. Have your notes, script what you have to say if necessary, but make sure you have a clear message. And if necessary, slowly read a script. It's not an ideal way to prepare or rather to deliver. But if you're a very nervous person, and particularly early on, it's better that you start that way so that you're on safe ground. You know what you're going to say and do. So there's a very quick, there's a lot more to say on that topic, but I'm just going to go on to the next section since we are a bit limited on time. I'm just trying to see what else we've got in terms of, seeing the time difference. How do you balance that while trying to achieve the objectives of the meeting? It's tough. It is tough. Look, I'm not going to gloss over that. Important points are raised, important conversations. If you think the meeting needs to overrun, and sometimes it does, as a chair, you should be prepared to say, I think we're going to need an extra half hour. Manage it. Don't just let it happen at the end where everyone's gagging to go away. They've got their next meeting and you haven't prepared anyone for that. But you do need to stop people repeating themselves and going on. Part of the problem with time management is repetition and interjections or contributions which are not valuable or off mark, off the subject. So it's discipline. How do you diplomatically deal with someone derailing? Diplomacy has different levels of intensity. You can start by being very polite. But as a chair, unfortunately, ultimately, you need to be very firm. Firm but fair is how I put it. It doesn't always make you very popular with that individual, but everybody else in the room will thank you because these things have to happen. Do it fairly and firmly. Don't make people feel foolish, but other people will thank you for stopping someone who's tried to hijack and derailing. You're not alone. I'm just looking at another question: how to manage situations where you're contradicted by someone and we're not sure of the answer. I think I'll come back to that one because these things often arise, and again, it depends very much on context. But when we come around to the conversation at the end of the questions, let's try and take it. Let's go on to the slide we've got in front of us just for a moment. So, no, back previous slide, please. Just attending meetings. What is your role? Know why you're in a meeting. Don't talk too long. It's a basic rule. We all have a habit to want to talk a bit too long. I'm guilty of it. We all are. Don't. Be disciplined. Have your note. Sense the mood. Again, it's a bit like walking in to have a touchy conversation with your boss in the morning. Sense the mood and judge, is it the right time and place for what you have to say and do? But do contribute, even if you're shy and retiring. Don't attend a meeting and not be seen to contribute. At the end of the day, meetings in whatever shape or form are also a showcase for you. In whatever level you may be, people will be judging you on the basis of what they see and they hear from your body language, your contribution to that meeting. When senior people get around and talk about more junior people for promotions or pay rises or whatever it might be, evaluations of different kinds, the impact that you may have in a meeting can be quite remarkable. People can remember seeing you in a context, a working context, particularly if they're people that you don't normally work with day to day. It's not always fair because you see a fleeting image at a meeting, and you get an impression of someone based on a very inadequate observation. But you as a participant in front of people you don't necessarily know, remember it's like a showcase. Show off what you can do. Make a contribution. And try and make it a good one. Prepare. Watch for posture. Don't slump. Don't look as if you're about to pass out. Don't spend all your time on your smartphone. We all know we have to get on our phones, but there is nothing worse than everyone sitting around doing this during the meeting when someone's saying something and everyone's doing this. It doesn't make you look good. So don't do it. If you need to make a quick reference to your phone, an incoming message, or send a quick message, we all have to do that. It's acceptable, but don't just do it. And remember to put the phones on mute. There's nothing worse than the phone going off. You had a conference on the stage in front of a camera, whatever, and the phone goes off, or in a meeting, phone goes off. It's not good. Eye contact, remember, if people are looking at phones, you can't make eye contact with them. They're not paying attention, but eye contact is a powerful way of engaging with people. If you're timid and shy, I know it may cause your mind to go blank. Try it, do it, build your confidence. Eye contact is a very powerful way of connecting with people. And speak up, and remember to be heard. Right, so that's that part. We'll go to the next part of this presentation. The hybrid. Now, this is a hybrid. They're tough because I can't see you, you can see me. I'm trying to face the camera. My camera is slightly off the eye line. So I'm actually looking at the slides and you're up here. It's slightly disconcerting. I'm trying to speak to the camera. Sometimes you're in a presentation which is a hybrid where you're speaking to a live audience and to a camera. The problem is people forget about the camera or they forget about the live audience. In reality, you have to split your time between the two. But remember always to face the camera. I did a presentation just recently where no one had told me that there were people watching online with the camera being in the laptop. I stood in the middle of the room. Those online couldn't see me. They heard me, but couldn't see what I was doing. I'm not sure what they thought I was doing. So again, in terms of preparation, I should have asked the question, how do people online see me? Ask the question, be aware, know what the technology is doing for you in a hybrid meeting. So make sure that you don't stray too far from a microphone either. Again, I've been at presentations, hybrid ones, where people are strutting around, walking around, feeling comfortable, feeling confident, and forgetting that the microphone is over there and you're talking over here. And the people online can't hear a word and may not be able to see you because you're walking up and down. So the discipline is position yourself centrally where people can see and hear you. It's obvious, but why do people keep getting it wrong? A little less movement. I am waving my hands around a bit. Maybe I should do it a bit less. It can be distracting. On the other hand, if I'm absolutely immobile and frozen onto the spot, you'll wonder if there's something wrong with the screen, there's something wrong with me, whether it's frozen. Some movement is required. It's necessary. It's part of the communicate, part of human communication. We all use our hands, occasionally our feet. It's what we do. And we have to remember, of course, the limited camera view online as well. I mean, at the moment, I'm a postage stamp in the corner of your screen, and you're actually looking at the bullet points. So it's my voice is doing the communication more than my body or my face. Right, let's go on to the next part. If there are any slides, I'll just quickly check the how we're doing. How to avoid, oh yeah, I love this one, by the way, coming back. How to answer mansplaining. Yeah, there's a great one. Well, tact and diplomacy, losing your patience, telling someone to shut up isn't the best way to do it, although sometimes that's what you want to do. I mean, sometimes someone is telling you something which is really extraordinarily obvious, and they're patronizing you by going into painful detail about something either you're not interested in at all, you couldn't be bothered, you don't need to know, or you know. But whichever which way round, always a polite, look, I'm terribly sorry, I don't have time now, or actually, yes, I do fully understand that. Shut them down. Firmly, but fairly. Don't make enemies out of people, because people who do the mansplaining, frankly, sometimes they're just unaware that's what they're doing. They have very low ability to read who they are speaking to. And I'll say, and I know everyone's going to howl with anger if I say that I generally find women's EQ is much higher than men's EQ. In many cases, their IQ is higher as well. But I get myself into terrible trouble by even thinking these thoughts. I know, but it is a problem, and the word mansplaining has the word man in it for a particular reason. So I think it's just a matter of taking control of a dialogue and being a little more assertive at times, and don't let people drone on, even in a private conversation. And I've been on the receiving end of it as well. So again, you just sometimes move it on. And let me just talk about I'm just keeping an eye on the time because we are getting about towards how do you engage with an audience that is shy or not responding when you're trying to engage? It's a tough one. It does happen, particularly at the beginning, because if it's 4 o'clock and you're in the death slot or immediately after lunch and the audience is comatose, people are dead. You have to animate them. You have to try and bring them to life. There are a variety of techniques. I don't have time to go into that now, but there are many ways of doing that. But you have to adjust your style. You have to look at what you're doing in front of that audience by, first of all, really accurately understanding what's going on in the room. But reanimating a dead room is quite a skill, and it requires a lot of energy, and it requires a few techniques. And I think that's something I'm more than happy to come and talk about in a different session. But it's a very good audience because we all encounter that the whole time. It's a very good question. Right, I'm just going to go on to the next section now because I think I don't really want to end up the end with not having covered the next two things, because we've got to talk about networking tips. Now, networking tips is... I said at the beginning, networking is critical. The latter part of my career, I have managed through the power of my own network. You build a network by getting to know people and engaging with people. In our industry, we do make friends, but most of the people we know are not friends, they're colleagues, or they're people we work with. We quite like them, but we're all busy people. We don't have a lot of time for friends, but we have a lot of time for people where we have common interests, common areas to work on. Therefore, your network is all about finding these common points of interest. At the beginning of your career, you need to decide what your network needs to look like. You need to start building it. If you're shy and timid, again, most people tend to be on the shy side, particularly in unfamiliar circumstances. It can be quite hard. So let's just talk through a few very quick pointers. Breaking the ice. When you go into a meeting or a room full of people, you don't seem to know anyone. Just see if there's anyone that looks a bit familiar or someone you may have met before. It's always good to start there. Start with familiar territory if you can. When you deal with people for the first time, find the common ground. People who do this frequently often have a couple of things that they want to start a conversation with. The British are famous for talking about the weather, because the weather is the number one point of contact. We all experience it. It keeps changing. It's a talking point. It's a way of breaking ice. If it's not the weather, in some circles, it's football. Now, I happen to know nothing about football and care even less. So I never default to sport because it's not my thing. But it's useful. A lot of people do talk about it. Those are obvious examples, but there are many, many other ways of breaking ice and finding common ground with people. It's always a good idea if you're new to it to start in a safe environment like ICMA event, a women's networking event where everyone is there because there's a common purpose. Or a guild. And at the beginning, Katie introduced me as a warden of the Worshipful Company of International Bankers. It's part of the fabric of the City of London. It's a membership organisation that does charitable work, but we have social evenings, people come together, and the minute you go to one, you can talk to anyone because you all have that in common. We're all trying to do the same thing, get to know people, cut across your organisational boundaries, across the industry. Now, if you're looking into a room and you can't see anybody, you don't know where to start, sometimes I just look for the lost person who's just arrived and doesn't appear to know anyone either. It gives you an anchor point for starting. Someone who's on their own, studiously reading some notes for no other reason. They don't know what to do and they want to avoid needless eye contact. Probably sipping there with a glass in the corner. Sometimes it's good to start with them, breaks the ice, build the confidence, get a feel for what's going on in the room. Don't expect anyone to come and save you or rescue you or sort you. Hosts at these events can be very absent. And sometimes it's just a dumping ground for people and you just have to make your own way through the melee. Now, the thing about taking the cold shoulder in your stride is a critical point. The cold shoulder, there will people that they're not interested in you. You are too junior, too senior, to whatever it is you might be. No point of contact. They're going to walk away. They're going to give you the bare minimum of niceties and politeness, looking over your shoulder for someone more interesting to talk to, then they're off. Look, it's the nature of just get used to it. It happens. It happens to me. I mean, people think, oh, God, it's him again. Who wants to talk to him? You know, oh, there's someone over there. Nice to see you, Tim. Oh, I'm off. You know, you can't get on with everyone. You can't connect with everybody. So it's a matter of having a thick skin and just getting on with it. Keep smiling. Don't drink too much. Just focus on networking. Enjoy the evening. Try and relax into it. Work the room. Don't get stuck in a corner. There may be someone really interesting in the other corner. Don't be rude to people, but keep moving. Try and find ways to move and hop and try and find out what's there so that you can optimize your networking. Make sure you have some idea what you might be looking for, what's the theme, what's going on that evening, what do you think you want to get out of it. Some people don't seem to have any idea what they get out of these things and they just turn up. But it's helpful if you have some purpose. And then the final point is, yeah, business cards. People still use them. I do, because that reminds me who I've met. All this online stuff, it's very useful. You do away with the paper. The problem is you can't remember who you've met unless you ping a message immediately or get them on LinkedIn. But even then, the next day you can't remember. And when you're connected with thousands of people as I am, the context and everything else is lost. A piece of paper I find very valuable. And what I tend to do is if there's someone I really want to connect with, I will send an email very quickly before they forget who I am. And I make a note of that detail and try and create a connection. So follow up immediately. If it's a week later or 2 weeks later, very frequently it's too late. They'll have forgotten where they met you, the context. You're just someone at a cocktail party or at an event or whatever. So you've got to be disciplined about doing that and following up. I'm going to go into the final section now, just so that we've at least covered all of the different parts of this. And this is delivering tough messages, because it's all about communication. So we've been through delivering messages either in a public format or in small groups, but that's usually informational or trying to convince people of something. We've talked about meetings. We've talked about networking and communicating with people more socially and building bridges and so on. But there are times, particularly as you get more senior, but not always, when there's a very difficult message to deliver. And I know that this is a sensitive area. In my current position as a senior management position, unfortunately, I get called upon to do it. The nice messages are all delivered by other people, and I end up having to deliver the really tricky, ugly messages, which you don't really want to have to be doing. And it's not necessarily a nice thing, but doing it properly is important. At its very worst, it's where you have to tell someone they no longer have a job, or it's a disciplinary hearing or procedure. These are the toughest. But there are other things as well. It's telling people to improve their performance, do a better job. Each one of us needs to decide how best to do it that suits our personalities. But we also need to be very clear who we're talking to and understand their personality and how they're likely to receive a certain message. And the higher you go in an organization, the more you need to better understand doing that. I know in the United States and America, it's quite common for tough messages, including firing people, to be done by an email or a text message, sometimes completely out of the blue. I cannot say how inappropriate that is. Of course, I would say also that sometimes with these tough messages, you do need to be working with your HR departments. And certainly in Europe, in the UK, we have to work within the constraints of employment law. The US is different, parts of Asia are different again, so practice will vary. But my general guideline is deliver messages person to person. Don't do it via a text message or email. Emails are some of the worst communication methods. Forget difficult messages, even for good messages. You would be amazed how badly emails are understood. Language can be an issue. The ability of someone to write can be an issue. But the emotion and the thought that goes into drafting an email, unless you happen to be a great writer, a great literary person, generally will come out and be understood completely differently at the other end. Most times it doesn't matter too much. Sometimes it can really matter. And misunderstood emails are a source of much, much anguish in our industry. But if you have something difficult to say, a private space without interruptions is nothing worse than having a phone go off or someone rush in when you're trying to say something really sensitive. You need to be able to work the message. Be sympathetic, but firm, direct, fair, and clear. I've had people come to me afterwards, having received really tough messages saying, I didn't understand what that person said to me. And I've had to reinterpret because it was a badly delivered message in the first place. Whatever you do, my next point is don't become emotional. The people you are speaking to might well become emotional. Sometimes people cannot deal with negative messages. If you know the person, you'll be better able to judge how they're likely to respond. In my day, on trading floors and out in the less regulated times in the industry, people at bonus time would do all sorts of irrational and strange things, throw telephones and PT screens and monitors around the room and make noise and break things and all sorts of dreadful behavior, getting very, very emotional, sometimes aggressive. I think, broadly speaking, we've all calmed down a bit. That kind of behavior is unacceptable, but it's really important, if you're delivering the message, to stay extraordinarily calm and sympathetic, however emotional the person is getting. Keep control, keep them calm, give them context, give them time to process. What I said at the beginning about delivering messages in a public forum is true also in this kind of private message of a negative kind. It takes time for the listener to process, to understand what they've been said, to let it sink in. You've got to give them the time to think it through and react. There is a delayed reaction. People go into denial and shock sometimes, particularly if it's to do with their job or their performance, and they think they've been doing well when they have not been. So it does require real emotional intelligence, real EQ, and that is something not everybody has, but as you go up through our organizations, you have to start to develop it. Be very clear, of course, when you're talking to anyone about what you're trying to achieve. A bit like a meeting, stick to the purpose. Don't go off all over the place. Don't deflect. Stick to what you have to do. And finally, just make sure it was properly understood. And remember, language and culture sometimes confuse messages. If you are delivering this difficult message, absolutely ensure before the meeting is finished that the person has properly understood. You don't want to be going through that all again and having a second attempt at explaining something, which will be most likely significantly more painful. So that's the final bit of it. I think we are looking at the clock. We are sort of 1 o'clock. I think we're almost there. Katie, are we going to have 15 minutes of questions, or are we going to wrap this up?
I'm actually, I think, just looking at somebody else to advise, Ludo. Yeah, I think we can build in a bit of time for questions if people want to stay on the webinar for a little bit longer. We still have a very high critical mass of participants. So let's go for some questions.
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a few, there's some great questions in here. One of them is, do you have any other, it says, I usually practice many times what to say before a presentation. Do you have any other tips for preparing? Practice, practice, practice. The less confident you are, the more it is good to practice. And frankly, it's embarrassing, but get a friend and practice delivering to a friend. It's very awkward, but frankly, public speaking is awkward. And sometimes, if it's a really important presentation or talk, do phone a friend, speak to a friend, present to that person in a semi-formal way. So you have to put yourself into the mood, into that space you're likely to have to prepare. So it's quite tricky. Now, in situations where a client meeting where the other party stays silent, does not react, you cannot sense what they're thinking. Yeah, it happens. It does happen. That's tricky when they go silent. You've got to figure out, are they thinking about what you've said? Are they trying to make a point? Are they playing games? It's difficult to give one answer without context, but having been a client-facing person all my life, there have been moments when people do go quiet on me. I will allow a little bit of natural silence. Don't feel you have to fill every silence, because the client may be just thinking about what to do or say next. But then I may throw the question out. I've done my presentation, I've had my say, I've shared my thoughts, ask a question, break that ice, re-engage if you can. Have something up your sleeve that you can go back to them in and say, we've still got 20 minutes. What do you think? What do you feel? Are we heading in the right direction? Something to get them to say something. And then again, there's no one formula for that. You have to judge every meeting and every mood as it goes. The more meetings you do, the better. And again, what I would always argue is, as a senior taking juniors into a meeting, encourage the juniors to say something from the beginning. Involve them in meetings to help them in the process of building their confidence, but also give them the opportunity to watch you handle these sticky situations. Because when they get into the sticky situation, as they become more senior, they will have a sense of what to do. Sharing that experience is what leadership should be all about. Doesn't always happen in our industry, but that's what should happen. Let's have a look. How do you leave a conversation you've initiated, start to notice the other person wants to leave also? I think that's relatively straightforward. It's wrapping something up is, depending on the context, you might say, look, I hope this is helpful. I realize I've got to be somewhere else. I've got something else to do. Or I've just got to, whatever it is, make an excuse, or say, look, maybe we should take this offline. Maybe we should take this another time. Let me think a little bit more about this and come back. 1,000 ways of dealing with it. But absolutely, if you're losing the attention in a small group or one-on-one, break it. Give yourself the opportunity to reset. You've lost your audience. Sometimes you can't get them back. Cut your losses. Maintaining the connection. Again, this is a good one. You've made that first connection. It's quite tricky. Old-fashioned Mark 1 cup of coffee, if you're in the same jurisdiction, same city, works very well. Again, when you've met people personally and re-established a personal link, that's far more powerful than online engagement. That said, online engagement can work. Don't be shy sending people messages. People send me lots of messages on LinkedIn. I try to reply to them. It's tricky. The best way to make real connections is to meet people and see them. In the order of priority, there is an email is a dreadful way to make connection, but it's a starter. A telephone call kind of works, but again, it's not perfect. A video call, well, at least you see them and you're looking at interacting a bit more, but seeing people is most important. As a client coverage person, you know, if you want to do business with someone, you've got to go and see them. You've got to be in the same room as them. And ideally, get a meal with them. The best way always to get to know people is over something to eat. Mankind have been doing that for thousands of years. And you can't beat it, but it's not always possible. How do you deal with stage fright? You've practiced, you've delivered, and then you go on and you freeze. That's where you need your notes. So if you are likely to be very nervous, potentially get stage fright, you've got your notes, go back to the script. Remember what I said about the power of silence. Stop. You're freezing up. Your mind's going blank. Stop. Reset yourself. Never be afraid to stop. Whatever you do, don't just go blundering on and lose control. Lose your thoughts and end up looking as if you've lost control and lost your thoughts. It's very obvious when people do that. If you realize you're about to get stage fright and freeze, or you're literally going into it, take a deep breath and stop. Draw yourself up. Recenter. Go back to your notes and then focus on your notes for a bit. If you prepared properly, you can do this. If you're ad-libbing, you're in trouble. If it's really bad and you don't have notes, bail. Cut. because you've lost your audience and you're better off leaving the situation.
I would just like to add one thing to this about dealing with nerves. And I can't remember where I heard this, but somebody said, if you're nervous, it's generally because you're afraid of coming across as nervous. So if you tell your audience that you're nervous, then there's nothing to be nervous about because they know. And actually, I think that's really quite useful.
And that's a fair comment. And by the way, let me make an additional point. You should be nervous. Whenever I give a presentation in front of a large audience, slightly unknown situation, I'm nervous. I do this a lot. But you need to be nervous, because being nervous means you're going to concentrate. The adrenaline will pump and you will focus on what you have to do and deliver. If you go in without being nervous and you assume you're going to be able to just bluster your way through, you will make mistakes and run the greater risk of completely failing in your task of communicating. And I've seen that happen. A little measure of nerves, not too much, is a very good thing. So don't be worried if you're nervous. Don't be worried. What do you handle moments when you forget what you're going to say? There's a simple one to answer. Stop. Reset. Change. If you really can't remember, go back to a different point. Restart the conversation. Redirect. It always happens. Remember, if you're in a meeting or you're at a formal presentation, you will have your notes. That is the time to go back to the notes, and don't be afraid to go back to the notes. And my mind goes blank the whole time. That's why I write things down, pick it back up, go back in. But you've got to be able to control yourself and the moment by stopping and resetting, because you will just get into panic mode if you don't. And we've all been there. Let's have a look. What else we got, Katie? Anything else you think we want to quickly answer? Yes, you will be slides, by the way. I'm very happy to share them. They're very high level, and I'd be more than happy to come back and talk in greater detail about any one of the 4 parts of this presentation.
Yeah, I think there's a good question here. What techniques can you use to remain calm and composed when facing difficult questions?
It depends a bit on your personality. Luckily, I'm a very calm person, but there will always be times when, frankly, you are being challenged, and people will be deliberately trying to make you less calm. People who are not calm make bigger mistakes than people who are calm. It's always worth remembering that manipulative people will try and push you to not being calm into a state of mind when you will be saying foolish things, making mistakes, or behaving in irrational ways, out of character. So staying calm, staying very disciplined is critical. Take a deep breath. Sometimes you've got to, this business about recentering yourself is really quite important. Take a step back. Sometimes these situations are completely ridiculous, but we allow ourselves sucked into a conversation, an argument, a bit of a demanding and challenging set of events or circumstances, when really we should be stepping back and defusing a situation. If someone is getting really annoying, you should probably just disengage and say, look, let's take this another time. Let's have this conversation somewhere else. Let's involve some other people. I can see this is something that matters a lot to you, but I need to go and think about this further. Disengage before you start getting all heated about it, start getting emotional about it. It will not help you. Emotion generally gets in the way of rational communication. There are times when it can be useful, but not many times. So be very careful about the emotion.
Thank you, Tim. I think we're probably going to have to draw a line under this now. We've overrun, and thanks to everybody who stayed on the line and for your questions, of which there were many. I think, Tim, you did a really good job of getting through most of the questions, and apologies if there were a few that Tim didn't get to. One thing that I would like to just reflect is a message that came in from somebody saying, thanks a lot for this great training, and can we have the slides? So I think that speaks volumes. Thanks very much, Tim. Thanks to everybody who's stuck with us, and I hope you all took away as much as I did from this session. Please keep an eye on our website, on our LinkedIn page for the ICMA Women's Network. Again, message as I mentioned at the start, if you want to keep apprised of any sort of similar type workshops that we'll be putting on, or events or networking sessions, whatever it happens to be. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Tim. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.